Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining ResearchRoadshow.com. Today is June 9th, 2023. It's 10:58 p.m. And I'm sorry for the late start, but I had to prepare a number of things before this went on the air. And I'll explain why as we go. Now that I think about it, I'll give you a little bit of background on the background right now, and that will help explain some of the things that we present later in the program. The issue came up earlier today on protecting the nest, that we discussed the topic of the ability of certain people of a certain level of power to manipulate the minds of young people. Well, not just the young people, but minds of most people in most countries. And this power was not given to them by the people. It was just taken because they could. And they have used this power to the best of their ability. They've hired the best mathematicians in the world from every single country, including North Korea. And they have put together these tools to keep us what George Webb refers to as inside the laser pointer. You've all seen the video, and you've probably known kids who've done this. They take a laser pointer and they drive the cat wild with it. It is in the cat's nature to chase that dot. You cannot teach the cat not to do it. It is deeply embedded in the cat's nature. So this begs the question, what is the nature of the human being? The nature of the male human being and the nature of the female human being. What are their respective natures? What are the things that they cannot change? We even have evidence, at least 4 cases from the medical history where a bullet has gone through someone's brain and they continue to live and they continue to function. And in 2 cases, their behavior improved. They were smarter, a little bit smarter as a result of the bullet. But some things do not change about human nature. No matter the insult to the brain that comes from eating frankenfood or poisoned water, certain things do not change. Some of the scientists that we've discussed on this show, and that John O'Loughlin has talked about, and that Mark and George have talked about, some of these scientists have delved very deeply into understanding human nature. And unfortunately, a few of these have partnered with very, very wealthy Europeans and 5 or 6 from the Middle East, and decided to use these traits of human nature against us to convince us to do things, starting with stock market investments, to do things which are against our best interests and the best interests of our children and our grandchildren and the future generations to come. The part of this ability to manipulate us, to drive the laser pointer, comes from the fact that certain evidence, certain truths are very forcefully kept out of the public eye, or kept out of the books, the encyclopedias, the handbooks, medical textbooks that the lay people have access to. And this is the story of Wendell Matthews. Wendell Matthews, in my opinion, is one of the smartest people born in the United States between 1945 and 1960. She is, at Boston, during my 11 years traveling back and forth to Boston, a total of 38 trips, I met many interesting people. Some of them would have gotten, 1500s or 1550s on their SAT. But Wendy was exceptional. She was truly exceptional. And I'll get into that as we go. Here's a picture. I'm sorry to keep you waiting, but here is a picture of Dr. Wendell Matthews, better known as Wendy Matthews. Okay, here we go. This is the only photo I could find of her on the internet. And I don't know how well you can see that. That's her in the middle. This is what you're looking at is a photograph from a 1973 yearbook. I believe this is her sophomore year at Indiana University. I found, or actually it was four of my fellow Ospreys told me to look at issuu.com. That's ISSUU.com, which holds many of these yearbooks. And a very convenient research tool right up there with Ancestry and genealogy.com. So Wendell Matthews, as a student at Indiana University, won many prizes. I don't think she was valedictorian, but she could have been and should have been. And what made her even more special was that she grew up, I think, just north of Birmingham, Alabama, in a very rural area. But when she was about 12 years old, she moved to Southside Chicago with her family. And there, by the time that she was ready to enter university, she had seen many acts of violence. And, by the account of a mutual friend, she was pure of heart as a little kid. And she was very deeply affected by witnessing firsthand these acts of violence. And so she made it her life's goal to understand fully what prompts a man, also women, but mostly men, to commit acts of violence. And, the sociology books, the medical books are full of various theories. But each of the individuals holding one of those theories has done limited work in a very narrow area, a domain of knowledge. And that's the problem with most of our PhDs today. I've met a great many. The great majority are fairly intelligent, but when they are issued a PhD from an Ivy League school or from Fontainebleau or from La Sapienza, that degree makes it says to the world, this person has a lot of knowledge in one tiny area. It's not the kind of master of philosophy that one was issued 300 years ago. Because at the time, 300 years ago, philosophy meant much more than just what today's Stanford Book of Philosophy means. Philosophy was how all the threads of life run, from the metaphysical from the base physical, then to chemistry, then to biochemistry. The whole intersection and weaving together of these domains was called philosophy. The key word is mastery. When you had a doctor of philosophy, that meant that you had a certain command of all of these fields, plus some specialization in one field. That is no longer the case. A good number of the students I've consulted to, they can't fix a car. They can't design a better vacuum cleaner. Their knowledge, their abilities don't extend into philosophy in the old-fashioned sense of the term. Now, I'm not saying they don't work hard. They work incredibly hard, but their knowledge is within a certain domain. And they are exclusively kept out of certain other domains, neighboring domains. This goes back to the idea of, especially what Judith Very Baker was talking about the other night, the siloization, the almost compartmentalization of the academic rank and file, right? So that people who work, I know aerospace students who worked on literally in two laboratories separated 50 feet apart that didn't know what the guy working down at the other hall at the other laboratory was working on. It was like a wheel bearing and a wheel hub, things that go together, but they didn't know each other until I introduced them. Okay, so why is Wendy so important to our story, to everything that George Webb has covered so far, to everything that Mark has covered so far? Because during the course of her work, she did not graduate with a medical degree, but she took a good number of biology courses, and over the course of the past 40 years, she's done a lot of brushing up. She's spent many hours. Wendy works, at least up until I lost contact with her, would work like 100 to 109 hours a week every single week. Every time I passed that section of the library, she was there. Every single time. She did not have a medical degree, but she did have a wide and ample knowledge of various disciplines within the medical field, including the brain, the studies of the brain. She gobbled up PhD theses and scientific papers, high quality scientific papers, like popcorn. She just went through them, and she could tell you, she could find an error. I'm not talking about a typographical error. I'm talking about a legitimate error in one of these papers, like the kind that wind up in Lancet, and explain to you, or to someone of the field, a professor of the practice, for example, exactly what he had missed and why his baseline assumption was wrong, or where there was a plus sign where a minus sign should have been. This ability is unique. I can read the abstract on many papers and follow more or less the general discussion. Okay, uma. But I could not do what Wendy does. At the same time, she has a law degree from Oxford, and she is very aware, and that's the base of her, the bulk of her research for the past 16 years, is understanding how a society's laws, written laws and unwritten laws, govern this tendency towards violence. For example, I pick an example out of the hat. Let's say you're a farmer and you're about to retire, you're 64, and then you lose your farm to an Archer Midland. And then you find out that the judge who decided that your property was really owed to Archer Midland was the brother-in-law of the regional director of Archer Midland, right? That's a huge conflict of interest. Even a 17-year-old knows that. And yet it could happen. So this kind of law, this relationship between how the legal system is designed to work, how it actually works, how the laws and unwritten rules of the society impact a person, combined with the frankenfood, combined to cause a person to commit acts of violence. And I am really, really, really simplifying Wendy's research right now, but that's what she's done for basically the past 16 years. She goes to for example, she went to Colombia or Bolivia in 2017 and did a lot of research on how the people of the time, how their rules, how their laws affected their diet, how the diet affected their head, how their behavior, interactions with each other combined to make new rules and new regulations. And it's Wendy's assessment that the human being would do much better in a society where there are more clear, concise rules, fewer laws, fewer rules to follow, and a much where the rules of the game are much clearer, and where everybody knows the rules of the game, and there's no discovering at the age of 64 that the rules were completely different. I mean, that there are unwritten rules that you didn't know about. Nobody clued you into, right? Okay, why is this important? Wendy has completely disappeared, despite all of her articles on science, on various medical issues, and all of her work as a professor of law. Everything is gone. There is not one single trace of Wendy's work on the internet. And let me give you an example. I'll do it in real time. All right, let's stop share on this one, and let's go look up Wendy's work on the internet. Now you would think, at least I would have thought, and I did when I first met her, I think in 2015, she did have quite a few mentions on ResearchGate. What's it? Research. Let me pull it up. All right, I'll share the screen so you can see what I'm trying to do. Now, I know everyone's tired and would like to get to bed, so I'll try to get to my point as fast as possible. But what I'm trying to do is to lead you slowly to an understanding of how powerful the most powerful men in Europe and 6 or 7 in the Middle East are. Okay, this is, I have to eat my words. There is one mention now of Dr. Wendell Matthews. 2 weeks ago, this was not the case. So here we have part of her discussion on Alzheimer's. Let's look at it. I've never seen this mentioned before. All right, I'll have to do a little more homework on this particular paper, or set of, I think it looks like a collection of abstracts. But lately, Wendy's research did cover Alzheimer's, and in the late part of 2019, she told me that she had found a protocol for reversing Alzheimer's naturally, as long as it wasn't too far gone, except for in the worst cases. Alzheimer's could be reduced naturally with no petroleum-based medicine. But more to the point of tonight's discussion, she proved to me that the amyloid plaque theory, which is the most popular theory right now in the medical journals as a cause of Alzheimer's, was completely bogus. Completely bogus. Not saying that amyloid plaque doesn't exist, but she showed to me sufficient. I really wish I had recorded it on audio tape. She proved to me And I can't even retrace my thoughts at the time. But she proved to me that the amyloid plaque theory was completely bogus. And about 5-6 months later, she calls me. I was at my parents' house at the time. She calls me at like 11:30 at night to say she's being followed. And this is in Cambridge, Massachusetts. She's being followed. She doesn't know why, but there are two gentlemen, and they're trading off every 15 minutes. They're trading off. They keep her. She goes to the library, goes to the stacks, picks out a few journals, and this guy is right there. And no matter where she goes, he follows her, pretends to be also an academic, even though he's holding the book upside down. So she's convinced she's being followed. Both these guys are wearing the Patriots hat, a baseball hat with a Patriots logo. Next day, they're there again. And after that phone call at 11:30 at night, I only had one other short phone call with her. And for the past 2 years, I cannot trace her. I cannot find her anywhere. I've tried all her emails. I've tried all her phone numbers. I'm trying very hard to reach her kids who live in Oregon, California, and in Nebraska, I believe. The three people that we have in common are unable to contact her. And her existence, all of her papers, except for this one abstract, all of her papers are gone. Why is Wendy? I think right now I'm in the position where I'm tempted to think that there are some powerful people in Boston who do not want this amyloid theory, that do not want Wendy's proof that the amyloid plaque theory is bogus to come to light, to reach the general public, because some members of the general public might be very upset, and they might actually take measures to stop the 7 or 8 pills that are going around to quote unquote cure Alzheimer's. Let me stop that for a second. And thank you for your patience. I know I'm taking a long time to get to my point, but there is, in Greater Boston, there are three men who I believe could be responsible for putting a trace, for having two men keep a constant active trace on Wendy's whereabouts and who she's talking to and what she's working on. There is one of the three men has a nickname that's a synonym for gloves. Okay. Think of a synonym for gloves that starts with the abbreviation for Massachusetts Institute of Technology, of which none of the professors of the Institute would meet with Wendy in a formal setting. Seven-letter nickname, synonym for gloves, starts with the initials for Massachusetts Institute. That's one of the men. He is, if it's the last thing I ever do, I will show that he is far, far more powerful than any Osprey has previously imagined. Far more powerful. The second I will call the suit. And the third one, I've already mentioned once briefly, is the man with the Patek Philippe, the really nice watch. He has the demeanor of a king. And when he sets foot on campus, everybody, all the professors of the institute, all the MIT corporation, except maybe the head of MITRE, they kowtow, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, whatever you want, sir. And he is, as I've said before, he is half Swiss and half Mongolian Chinese. I'm not exactly sure which. Those three gentlemen, again, gentlemen, parola rosa, those three gentlemen would not like to see Wendy's story get out. They would not like to see Wendy's proof of her work on Alzheimer's or Parkinson's get out. And they certainly don't want people to understand that scientists who get into the scientists who discover the holes or poke holes in their balloon, a hot air balloon filled with CO2, whoever pokes holes in their balloon might have a very, very difficult life. But it really, I don't know if any of you are fathoming this, but it really disturbs me that they can erase your existence, make it as if you have never lived, that all your work, your 50 years of hard work, grueling work, painstaking work, tedious work is gone. And that maybe even your children can't find you. That disturbs me. Okay, how does that relate to what we were talking about earlier today during the Protect the Nest? And if you haven't watched it, please go back and watch that tomorrow morning sometime. There is a group of men in the world who are very, very powerful. And I know it's hard for Americans to accept, but they yield the power. Well, think about this for a minute. Every single day, billions of documents are added to the internet. Billions. And some small fraction will have referenced some of the, 100, 200 articles that Wendy wrote, either in the legal field or in the medical field. The mathematics, having been associated with mathematicians and computer scientists for a long time, some of whom have worked on the early days of the web crawler. I'm going back to 1996, web crawlers in 1996. The keeping all of Wendy's documents and speeches off of the internet is a mind-blowingly complex task. It is not a simple matter of just saying, well, put a minus term in the search bar and add that, if Dr. Wendell Matthews or Wendell Matthews PhD is in the search term, you put in the hashing algorithm at every server that Google owns a minus term so that certain things don't appear. It is much more complex than that. So someone is spending a lot of cash to make this happen. And it disturbs me that some of my tax money is going into that pile of money that's keeping Wendy off the internet. Anyway, I think I've gone on a little bit too long, but this power is just one example of what the big club, as George Carlin called it, have in their toolbox to keep the people confused, to keep that laser pointer going, right? And I'm thinking in particular, I won't say his name on air, but there's someone, a former friend of my family who was in the Tea Party, key figure in the Tea Party back in the early days of the Tea Party, who who is being laser pointed, like you wouldn't believe. Oh, by the way, last point I'll make tonight. Back when I still had a Twitter account, the old one, not the new one, which is Citizens, capital C, RRS. So that's Citizens, capital R, capital S, after the twitter.com. When I used to have a Twitter account, I only had 75 followers, and I was coming up with some pretty good stuff, okay? If you see somebody that has 500,000 followers or 700,000 followers, like that Harvard doctor I talked about on Monday, you've got to ask yourself, how is it possible that is it possible? I mean, everything's possible nowadays, but what are the odds that that person with 700,000 followers after just 2 years is part of, or in some way being pushed and boosted by the deep state? If I was getting 75 followers after 5.5 years of being on Twitter, and this guy's getting 700,000 after 2 years, there's a very good chance that he's doing something or she is doing something that the deep state likes. That doesn't mean that they're getting paid, that they're on the payroll, although that's another issue we'll get into in a couple of weeks. But it means that that person is pushing out info which is not 100% reliable, or it favors the production of a certain aluminum forest. Now, oh, by the way, I heard a couple days ago about a guy who had 27.1 million followers. 27.1 million followers. Do you think he could be part of the deep state unknowingly? Okay. Or that the deep state is favoring him unknowingly? I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. If someone has 27.1 million followers, I think there's an excellent chance he's doing something to move that laser pointer, even if he doesn't know it. I really, really do. All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry to keep you so long. I will let you go, and tune in tomorrow at noon on our Zoom channel for a George Webb video watch party. Please pray for the kids, especially those in medical experiments, and please pray for all of the elderly that have Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. See you tomorrow.